Welcome to Surveying the History and Future of Prince Hall Freemasonry, sponsored by the Cory Lodge of Research and Education. I'm Brother Antonio Caffey, and I'll be your host this evening. I currently serve as the master of the Research Lodge and I'm a proud past master of St. Mark's Southern, located in Columbus, Ohio. Both lodges are chartered by the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Ohio, which was established in 1849. I'm also currently serving as the Right Worshipful Grand Historian of the Grand Lodge. Before I let our guests this evening introduce themselves, I'd like to state that the views and opinions that are expressed by the host and guests tonight in no way reflect the views and opinions of the Grand Lodge and lodges that we have membership in. Also, if you have any questions, please feel free to post them on the YouTube page, and if we have time at the end of the conversation, we will try and answer some of them. At this time, I'll let our guests introduce themselves. Brother Collins.
All right. Thanks so much, Brother Caffey. Good night, brothers. Good evening. Hope to everyone out there, and good morning to some of you as well. I'm Ken Collins. I serve as the Grand Historian for the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Alabama. Our leader, Grandmaster Cory D. Hawkins, and I'm a member of Pride of North Birmingham Lodge, number 319, out of Birmingham, Alabama, where my worshipful master is also the Honorable Tim Sanford. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys here, and I can't say enough too many times, Brother Caffey. We appreciate you putting this together because we're really getting on the precipice of talking about some things that typically go unseen with Prince Hall Freemasonry. In the past, we thought that there were only two of the tall cedars of Lebanon who were cracking open books and actually writing histories, but we're actually seeing that there are gentlemen out there today. So again, Ken Collins, the Right Worshipful Grand Historian for the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Alabama.
Brother Morgan.
Thank you, Brother Caffey. My name is Morgan III. I currently serve as Worshipful Master of the Corinthian Lodge number 18 here in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. I've also served as a Worshipful Assistant Grand Historian and Archivist. And I also serve as Senior Warden of the David Research and Education Lodge as well here in the District of Columbia. I'd like to say a big thanks to my Grand Master, Norman Campbell. Although I do not represent the views of the Grand Master or office or my Grand Lodge, I'm very thankful to have their blessing to be here this evening and to talk about some of this history. And again, I cannot express enough how honored I am to be here with such illustrious gentlemen. And I want to give honors and greetings to you and your various jurisdictions.
All right, and I guess I might as well go ahead and jump on in. My name is Dave Gilliam Jr. I serve as the Grand Historian for the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia. I'm a member of Mount Episcopal Lodge number 53. I served as Worshipful Master in 2010 and 2011. My Grand Master is Most Worshipful Bruce St. James, and I'm just glad to be here.
Thank you, brothers. And I really should have mentioned too, and forgive me, it was the absence of the mind and not the heart. My Grand Master is the Honorable Carl A. Williams, who was just recently elected at our last Grand Communication this past August. So again, thank you all for joining us this evening. We hope to be able to provide some good information on Prince Hall Freemasonry. As some of you may be aware, 231 years ago today, the Grand Lodge of England, which is now known as the United Grand Lodge of England, issued a charter to Prince Hall and other men of color, organizing the lodge into African Lodge 455. We're going to discuss the history of Prince Hall Freemasonry along with current trends and other interesting points as well. recognize that our audience is comprised of individuals who may be well versed in the history of Prince Hall Freemasonry, people that are interested in the history but have not really studied it, and individuals who just may be curious about Masonry. So when we talk about the history of Freemasonry, we really need to understand that American Freemasonry in general it really has a very bizarre origin. From the St. Andrew Lodge growing out of an assembly of 7 Freemasons and making Freemasons prior to receiving their charter to do so, to the formation of several lodges in Virginia from one single charter. As my good friend and brother Ralph McNeil often says, Freemasonry was the wild, wild west back then. So we need to understand that the rules that governs the craft today were not really in place during the early formation of lodges and grand lodges in this country. And in general, Freemasonry in this country was actually being formed at the same time that America itself was being born as a nation. For Prince Hall Freemasonry and his brethren, you had the bizarre origins of Freemasonry early on, in addition to the backdrop of a growing slave trade, a non-recognition of the value of African American life, and the segregation of black folks during this time period. So not only to fully understand, but to fully appreciate the accomplishments of Prince Hall and the other brothers, you really have to look at it through a historical context of that time. And to simplify how we're going to look at it, I just want to point out some key dates and some very important dates when it comes to Prince Hall Freemasonry. So we know on March 6, 1775, Prince Hall, Peter Best, Cuff Buffram, John Carter, Peter Freeman, Fortune Howard, Cyrus Johnbus, Prince Reese, Thomas Anderson, Boston Singer, Boston Smith, Cato Speen, Prince Taylor, Benjamin Tiber, and Richard Tiley were all made Freemasons in a lodge that was attached to a military regiment working under the authority of the Grand Lodge of Ireland in Boston, Massachusetts. In July of that same year, after the military or that military lodge left Boston, they left Prince Hall and the other brothers a permit which allowed them to meet as Freemasons, bury their dead brethren with Masonic rites, and also to assemble and celebrate our St. John's, the Baptist and St. John's the Evangelist Day, which Freemasons celebrate all around the world. In 1784, in June of that year, under the signature of Prince Hall, the lodge sent a letter requesting a charter to the Grand Lodge of England. And then on September 29th of that year, the Grand Lodge of England issued a charter to Prince Hall and the other brothers, officially forming African Lodge number 459. In 1787, obviously due to the traveling during that day was quite differently than traveling today, but 3 years later, the warrant actually arrived and it reached African Lodge in Boston, and those brothers again organized African Lodge number 459 with Prince Hall being its worshipful master. In 1797, Prince Hall established one of the first black interstate organizations when he helped form lodges in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and Providence, Rhode Island. So you really see the brothers during this time operating not just in their locale or their city where they were located, but you reached out and started forming those relationships that across state lines, which we'll talk about the role that actually played and what it spurred a little later on in the conversation. In 1807, Brother Prince Hall passed away, and then in 1827, African Lodge declared itself independent and started operating fully as a Grand Lodge. So again, talking about the history, and we're going to get into why there are some misconceptions about what happened and when did it happen and different things like that. But I just wanted to point out those key dates that are very important, not only to Prince Hall Freemasonry, but Freemasonry in general. So as I said, with the when Prince Hall reached out in Philadelphia and in Providence and you forming that interstate connection, we see the role that it played in helping to also establish the connections that went on to partly to help form the Underground Railroad movement, as well as the Abolitionist movement as well, which Brother Morgan covered right now. Brother Morgan?
Thank you, Brother Caffey. I want to make a suggestion, too, as we get into the presentations. I know we were having some feedback problems getting some messages. So, brothers, as we get into our presentations, let's try to reintroduce ourselves just so everybody can get that information clearly. Again, if you couldn't hear me the first time, my name is James Morgan. I'm Worshipful Master, Corinthian Lodge number 18 here in Washington, D.C. I've also served as the Worshipful Assistant Grand Historian and Archivist for the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of District of Columbia, and I'm very happy to be here tonight. I'm going to present you all now with a brief overview of Prince Hall Freemasonry during the Abolitionist movement. Let's see here. Okay. So, can everybody see my slideshow? Brother Caffey? Hello?
Yes, it's clear.
Yes, okay. All right, good. Okay, so just to get straight into it, again, I want to give thanks for having this event tonight. This is a historic event, and I'm very honored to be here. We're going to start off. This is my my going theme. I like to give thanks. This is a picture of Joseph Mcbride, his wife Jane, and their children. Brother Joseph Mcbride was a member of Myrtle Lodge number 162 under the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Alabama. He was born a slave, actually, a few years prior to the Civil War, and he was made a Mason on June 22nd, 1904. I have the honor of calling Joseph Mcbride my direct ancestor. He was my great-great-great-grandfather, and making myself a sixth-generation Prince Hall Mason. And I always dedicate my historic Masonic work to him as my ancestor. So I just want to give thanks to him and dedicate this to him. Prince Hall Freemasons are an organization that's often misunderstood. Oftentimes we are categorized as being merely a blackface version of our Caucasian counterparts. However, I am of the belief that Prince Hall Freemasonry has always had an extra calling, in part inspired by the experience of Black America. As Joseph Hawks is highly quoted as saying, the story of Prince Hall Freemasonry is indeed the story of the experience of Black America. And you can't understand Prince Hall Freemasonry without understanding the Masonic organization, but you also have to understand the experience of Black America. With that being said, here we have the brothers from the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of New York, but you'll see here, this is not a very good photo, but this is Brother Arturo Schaumburg. He was a bibliophile, Black scholar. He was also Grand Secretary of the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of New York. A lot of brothers and sisters out there may not know that he was a Mason, and he was very active, but he's a perfect representative of this servant leadership that you see within the Prince Hall Masonic movement. So tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about where this came from. I'm not going to get too deep into any one particular slide, but we're going to keep going. If you have any questions, please shoot them to the YouTube page. Talking about the land they left, Africa itself is a very complex continent. Today there are many languages spoken, many different ethnic groups, but there are also many different organizations. Africans historically are one of the most fraternal people in my study in the of our history. This is actually a picture of members of the Poro Society. This is a male rites of passage program. The female counterpart to that is the Sunday Society, and they come out of the region of Sierra Leone. This is the kind of organization that, if anyone's seen Roots, the very beginning of that series, you'll find Kunta Kinte being taken into manhood training. So understanding that the concept of rites of passage, the concept of fraternalism itself was nothing alien to African people. The transatlantic slave trade, most people would know about that from school, but just to recap, I put these two pictures here as a to juxtapose. A lot of times people will notice or will be more familiar with the images of Africans coming onto ships naked or barely clothed, but I wanted to show this other picture as well of these Africans being taken to a ship, but you see they have clothes on. They're coming from a culture, even though they couldn't bring their material goods with them, they definitely brought their memories. And even though they couldn't hold on to the institutional lineage, if you will, they still tried to hold on to the intellectual lineages that they came from as they came to the Americas and to the Caribbean. I'm not going to dwell too much on this because I think we all pretty much know, as Brother Caffey pointed out earlier, but Prince Hall, 1775, was made a Mason in Boston, Massachusetts. This is the African Lodge 459 Charter, which we're celebrating today, and that is still in existence and still in the possession of the most worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of the state of Massachusetts. So we give thanks for him. And again, this is not a to-life picture of Prince Hall. This is just an image. There are several images out there of him, but there are no known actual pictures of Prince Hall, only artist interpretations. Establishing authority. As Prince Hall's movement grew, he was able to link up with other leaders of that time period. This is, of the revolutionary time period. Here we have Absalom Jones, Richard Allen, two of the early founders of the Black Church, the AME Church. They were also very instrumental in helping Prince Hall to grow his movement. Absalom Jones becoming the first Grand Master of Prince Hall Masons in the state of Pennsylvania. He definitely doesn't get enough credit, in my opinion, for what he and those brothers did to help expand the organization as it grew from Boston into New York, into Pennsylvania. And the AME Church and Prince Hall Freemasonry definitely go hand in hand. So when I say establishing authority, what I'm saying is that these brothers not only used the Bible and religion, but they also were attempting to use the law to try to justify their abolitionist activities and saying, listen, if the Constitution of the United States does not say, or excuse me, if it does say all men are created equal, then all men are created equal. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And this is the kind of moral authority that they were trying to establish for themselves and for their community. During the early abolitionist efforts, you had members of African Lodge like David Walker, who published his appeal to the colored citizens of the world, where he basically advocated for enslaved Africans in the southern United States to rebel and to get their liberation, literally by any means necessary. And he was saying this years before Malcolm X would make those very words famous. To the right here we have Prince Abdul Rahman Ibrahim, who we don't know if he was a Mason. I'm not going to get too deep into the story because I could spend all night on that. But he was an African. He was a prince, as I said, from West Africa, who ended up getting his freedom, but he was trying to raise funding to purchase his family's freedom because he had been in Mississippi for, I believe, it was about 20 or 30 years. And David Walker ends up being his bodyguard as he's touring around Boston. And eventually he does end up getting back to Africa, but before he leaves, he actually gives a speech at African Lodge because he knew that this was a space where he could come and find friends who would hear his case and who had an organization that could assist him in his effort, and they did to the best of their ability. The National Grand Lodge, aka the Compact, this is a very controversial topic. I'm not going to get too deep into that because I know Brother Collins will be dealing with that a little later, but this is a picture of John T Hilton. He was a Grand Master of Prince Hall Masons in Massachusetts who started this national organization. Again, very controversial, but the one good thing I will say about it is that in forming a national identity, not only were they able to keep their movement unified to some extent, but they were also able to assist with the establishment and maintenance of the Underground Railroad. Prince Hall Masons, particularly here in Washington, D.C., my backyard, would end up trying to use the letter of the law to seek abolitionist goals and agendas, such as shutting down the importation of the slave trade, as well as the full and complete abolition. Here we have two of my personal favorites, Brother William Custis Costin. You might not recognize that Custis name because he is a relation to George and Martha Washington, having been born at Mount Vernon Plantation. He was also a founding member of Social Lodge No. 1. And here is his son, Most Worshipful Past Grand Master John Thornton Costin, who served as Grand Master of the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of D.C. Both of these men played very pivotal roles here in the nation's capital in the Abolitionist Movement. If anyone studies the early history of Prince Hall Freemasonry here in the District of Columbia, what you will find is a lot of these early brothers end up getting arrested for forging freedom papers, manumission papers. for straight, actually taking enslaved persons and taking them over state lines, etc. But they're getting very, very light sentences. That's one thing that I discovered in my research, and I was very interested as to why. But then when I realized a lot of these men, such as William Costin, Francis Datcher, John W. Prout, were going before the same judge, okay? And when I looked his information up, I realized, oh, he's a Mason. So they're using the Masonic network, even though they're segregated formally, they're still using the Masonic network to try to get intellectual space as well as space for their activism. John T. Costin, a generation after his father, would actually work with the Freedmen's Bureau and end up going down to Georgia, where he would work in the state legislature as well. So these are very, very active men who are utilizing the Masonic network for expanded purposes, but they're using it as a means to an end. We have here Brother Lewis Hayden, or excuse me, past Grand Master Lewis Hayden, who was actually a runaway from Kentucky, a very, very militant brother who was a conductor of the Underground Railroad. He assisted countless enslaved persons to freedom. Very notably, Brother Thomas Sims, as Brother Gillum let me know earlier, who was a brother of a Grandmaster James Sims of Georgia. So you see, as they're helping other formerly enslaved people who are seeking their freedom, they're actually replenishing their ranks. You end up getting brothers like Brother Martin Delaney, who one of his most famous quotes is saying that he thanked God every day for making him a black man. So not only are they activists, but they're conscious of their Africanity. They're conscious of the transatlantic slave system and what effect it's having on their people. And as men and as Masons, they could not sit by and just idly and watch that go on. Martin Delaney actually would take up arms during the Civil War, probably one of the most famous black soldiers during the Civil War, and he also was had been admitted to Harvard Medical School as well. And he's just again another person I could spend all night talking about, but out of respect, I won't tonight. After the Civil War, you end up having brothers such as Brother Hiram Rhodes Revels, Brother Jefferson Long, all these brothers who are leaders within the Prince Hall Masonic fraternity end up going to Washington. They end up taking up local positions in the state legislatures and county seats, treasurers, etc. And they're trying to not only form community for the over 4 million formerly enslaved persons, but they're also trying to engage in the political process. One of the first things that you'll find a lot of Prince Hall Freemasons are concerned about is the vote, making sure they have secured suffrage, so that way they can express their political will and take control of their destiny and be a self-determining community. And again, not only are they leading in the political arena, in the economic arena, but these men particularly are also leaders within the organization itself. Another interesting dynamic that I think is very powerful. I myself am a very active genealogist, a family historian. One thing you'll find very interesting is that the networks not only were fraternal, but they were also blood sometimes. So here you have an example of that, where you have Most Worshipful Past Grand Master Henry C. Bruce, who's not very well known per se. He did write an autobiography called 29 Years a Slave, 29 Years a Free Man. But he has a much more famous younger brother in Senator Blanche K. Bruce, who ended up coming here to Washington, D.C. and working as a senator. He took various government positions and was very wealthy. But you see this dichotomy between the brother who may not be well known to the rest of the world, but he's very active in his fraternity, but yet and still he's able to reach into these networks, whereas he has a brother, a fraternal as well as a blood brother, who was working on Capitol Hill. Another example of this same dynamic, you have past Grand Master Charles H. Langston, who actually served as deputy under Henry Bruce, but he's the brother of John Mercer Langston, who's a very, very famous former former president of Howard University, which is my alma mater. And both of these men are, Charles Langston, if I'm not mistaken, is the grandfather of Langston Hughes. So you see there's not only an intellectual genealogy, but there's a blood genealogy that's running through Prince Hall Freemasonry, various families, and even the brothers here today on this panel. Last but not least, I'm just briefly going to touch on Prince Hall Masons taking over in the academic arena. You have brothers such as Richard Theodore Greener, the first ever man of African descent to graduate from Harvard University with a bachelor's degree. A lot of people know Du Bois graduated from Harvard, but Du Bois got his PhD from there. Richard Greener actually graduated as an undergraduate from Harvard University. He was a professor of philosophy, metaphysics, and early psychology as well. And then you have people like John F. Cook Jr., past Grand Master here of D.C., who are, again, servant leaders. John F. Cook served as a trustee at Howard University. He actually advocated in 1869, along with John Mercer Langston and Charles Langston, to establish a black military institute in the nation's capital. That wasn't successful. However, these are the kind of things these brothers are advocating for. So again, not to take up too much time or anything, I'm going to stop the screen share now so that we can move on to the next presenter. Thank you. Did I put it back?
Yep, you're good.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Thanks. So, as Brother Morgan alluded to, and as we've discussed as well, you know, part of the history of Freemasonry, or part of the history of Prince Hall Freemasonry, was men coming together to work together across state lines, trying to build organizations to support the communities in which they lived in, as well as just trying to create some type of organization to really, you know, be out there at the forefront for African Americans. One of the organizations that the brothers founded, you know, our early brethren founded, was something called the National Grand Lodge, which often gets discussed and talked about. And at this time, Brother Collins will go into a little more detail regarding the National Grand Lodge. Brother Collins. Hey, Brother Collins. Seem to be having some technical difficulties right now. Bear with us. Hey, Brother Collins, can you hear me? You're muted, I believe.
Can you hear us?
Hey, Brother Collins, I think you're still muted.
Not sure.
Bear with us for a second, please. We'll get it fixed.
I'm not sure why. Yeah, it says I'm presenting. I'm not sure what I hit.
No, I think you're good. I think it's something on his end. The screen is acting a little slow too. You know, if we can, we'll work on getting Brother Collins up. Brother Gillarm, if you can, we also, with that, the National Grand Lodge, we also wanted to discuss regularity and recognition as well. So at this time, Brother Gillarm, if you can go ahead with that.
All right, everybody, you can hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, once again, my name is Dave Gillarm. I have the pleasure of serving as Grand Historian for the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia. I'm also a past master of Mount Pisgah Lodge, number 53 in Columbus, Georgia. We talk about recognition and regularity. These two items are linked together, but they're actually separate. We talk about regularity. In order to be established as a legitimate Grand Lodge, you must be able to trace your lineage to either the United Grand Lodge of England, the Grand Lodge of Scotland, or the Grand Lodge of Ireland. Basically, in English, you trace your Masonic lineage the same way you do your family lineage. So my lodge is Mount Pisgah number 53, chartered by what's now the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia. So what we do, we look at what lodges established our Grand Lodge. Those lodges being Eureka Lodge number 11, Hilton Lodge number 13, and Banneker Lodge number 38. We have those lodges. We look at what Grand Lodge issued a charter to start those lodges, which was Massachusetts and Pennsylvania. And you continue the same process until you get to one of those three mother Grand Lodges. In the case with Prince Hall Grand Lodges, they all trace their lineage to a singular source, which was being African Lodge 459, which was chartered by the premier Grand Lodge of England, which is now known as the United Grand Lodge of England. So it doesn't matter where your Grand Lodge is located in the world. In order to be a legitimate Grand Lodge, you must be able to trace your lineage to one of those three places. When we talk about recognition, recognition is the icing on the cake, and regularity is the cake itself. In order to be recognized as a legitimate Grand Lodge, you must have regularity of origin. Not all, and keep in mind, not all regular Grand Lodges are going to recognize each other. So, in order to establish recognition, I always say you have to be a regular Grand Lodge. And recognition is basically a treaty or agreement between Grand Lodges to recognize each other and to allow them or to allow their members to visit each other's lodges freely. So now we establish recognition and regularity. Brother Caffey, do you want me to go ahead and go into the next topic as well?
Yes, go ahead.
All right, now we were talking about legitimate Grand Lodges and being regular and recognized. For years, Prince Hall Grand Lodges were not recognized. That did not affect their regularity one bit. And just because a particular Grand Lodge does not recognize you does not automatically mean that you're not a legitimate body. But there are also what we call clandestine or bogus bodies. These groups do not meet the standards for recognition, therefore they can never be recognized. These groups actually pretend to be Masonic in origin, but they're actually essentially social clubs. They have no lineage to Masonry. This is essentially as somebody saying that they're a member of your family, and they're going to demand that you treat them as a member of your family, even though they have no blood connection to you. Now you can rest assured that if Dave Gillam shows up to your family cookout and demands that he's a member of your family and expects a plate, you're probably going to tell me to turn around and go back to wherever I came from. And that's essentially what happens with these clandestine or bogus groups. They pretend to say that they're Masons and expect legitimate bodies to actually recognize them and accept them. But in turn, we just tell them just to go back to wherever you came from. But these groups, such as what Brother Kyle, I don't want to steal his thunder, but there's a group now calling themselves Prince Hall Origin, who fits in this category. We have Minor Free and Accepted Masons of the World, which is headquartered here in Columbus, Georgia. And we have the International Free and Accepted Modern Masons. Now, there are hundreds of groups, but these are probably three of the larger ones, and including the John George Jones Scottish Rite affiliation groups. These groups were started by people, the majority of these groups were started by people that were never Masons. They just woke up one day and decided that they were going to pretend to be a Mason. They were going to start an organization. They're going to continue to bring in other men and essentially line their pockets by pretending to be Masons. So with these bodies, and I won't talk for long about it, these groups have no chance on being recognized. The only option that they will have is to essentially dissolve and their members petition to become legitimate Masons under either Prince Hall Grand Lodges or the Grand Lodge State. That's the only option that they will ever have. And if most of you are watching this online, so there's a presentation done by Brother Antonio Lilly, who was the director of a commission on bogus Masonic practices for the Flex Society called "We Are Not All Brothers." So if you Google this, if you Google "We Are Not All Brothers" and include his name, Antoine Lilly, there's going to be a slideshow presentation describing these type of organizations, what regularity is, what recognition is, and why exactly these bodies are clandestine. So thank you, Brother Caffey.
Thank you, brother. So, every time when we talk about recognition and regularity, when you're talking about the history of Prince Hall Freemasonry, you have to have that conversation for a number of reasons. But I applaud Brother Gillarm, because it can be a tough conversation to have sometimes when you're talking about that. So I applaud him for that. So I think we have. Let me make sure this check. I think we. Hold on, brother.
Can you hear me?
Yep, there you go. All right, we have brother.
Outstanding. Now we're cooking with gas. You want me to go ahead and hop back in on the National Grand Lodge?
Yes, sir.
Outstanding. All right. Now I want to make sure that we go over this I want to keep this quick and dirty, because we get into too many details, we'll end up going off in various tangents, but I want to try to keep this as succinct as possible. There are essentially in the aspect of Prince Hall Freemasonry, there is one root, and that's African Lodge 459. And from that root comes a body which came under the guise of the National Grand Lodge. About 1843, representatives from a dozen of the, I hate to use the term, but the Caucasian Grand Lodges had a meeting in Baltimore to essentially come up with an idea to have a unified Grand Lodge where they'd have uniformity, and also under the guise of having one centralized Grand Lodge for America. That failed. They threw that idea out. But I'm going to use a little crude quote that past imperial potentate Oliver Washington uses. He says that when America gets a cold, the African American community gets the flu. So with that same concept, when mainstream America comes up with something, the African American community also tries to do it, but when we try to do some of the certain points in history, we might not get it right. And the National Grand Lodge is one of those essential areas. The National Grand Lodge, when the call went out for the National Grand Lodge, it was essentially supposed to be a call for the schism that was going on with the Grand Lodges in Pennsylvania, to basically the other Grand Lodges were to come together and to basically squash the issues that are going on. But what we end up seeing in 1847 is the representatives from the various Grand Lodges end up showing up, and they end up turning it into a National Grand Lodge. Now, we have, again, there's two different trains of thought. It's the traditionalist Prince Hall PHA train of thought that the individuals that showed up, they showed up for a specific reason and rationale of establishing essentially a clearinghouse for Masonic practices. That's it. That's all. Now you have another group that feel that they came there for a greater purpose, and that was establishing the National Grand Lodge. Now we have two researchers to whom respect have to be given due. Brother Alton Roundtree for the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of D.C. He's written a book, Out of the Shadows, about the National Grand Lodge. And then there's also a brother, one of the National Grand Lodge's chief historians, Brother Chris Belcher. And I call him brother because he's my Sigma brother, not necessarily on the guise of being a Freemason. I have to make those designations. But Brother Belcher, as well as Brother Roundtree, or of the ilk that the National Grand Lodge is established as it's the be all to end all of, and basically the mother of Prince Hall Freemasonry. When in reality, it's not the mother of Prince Hall Freemasonry, because when the National Grand Lodge births itself, and again, it births itself, and it's not a real institution, because if we talk about, again, when we talk about regular Freemasonry, the structure of regular Freemasonry is the individual jurisdiction is a sovereign jurisdiction in charge of all judicial, executive, as well as ritualistic practices. Okay, so with the National Grand Lodge, you have a National Grand Master, and then you have a State Grand Master. The State Grand Master answers to a station above his station. So that in and of itself is a no-no. And if you want to say that it's a Provincial Grand Lodge, which the argument has been made by some in the National Grand Lodge, you have to, again, it's not a Grand Master. It's not a State Grand Master. You are essentially basically a deputy over the state of XYZ. So there's a big difference between the designations there. But with talking about the National Grand Lodge, after it's formed in 1847, it basically, and again, it's the two trains of thought. Some believe that the National Grand Lodge was the impetus for pushing Prince Hall Freemasonry across America. Whereas there are others, like myself, that say the National Grand Lodge did serve a purpose in kind of creating more of a, again, the clearinghouse for Masonic practices. This is how you enter a lodge. This is how we create forms, so on and so forth. But as far as the spread of Prince Hall Freemasonry, that is not due to the National Grand Lodge, in my opinion. It's due to the independent Grand Lodges themselves, because according to the National Grand Lodge's own constitution, in order to become a member of the National Grand Lodge, a Grand Lodge has to first establish itself. And again, we're out of the wild, wild west now. Now we're starting to get into the modern feel of Prince Hall of regular Freemasonry, and not in the wild, wild west, where you have to have 3 lodges in order to form a Grand Lodge. 3 lodges with legitimate charters from a higher body of competent jurisdiction. So now you have Grand Lodges forming, but also getting a charter from the National Grand Lodge, if not the same day, later on, months later. So now you have the National Grand Lodge, and now you have this entity that comes to birth called the Grand Lodge of Ohio. And a lot of people say that African Lodge 459 is one of the most important lodges in Prince Hall history. It is, because it establishes the baseline. It's the mother where all our fruit flows. But the Grand Lodge of Ohio is the straw that breaks the camel's back in opening up Prince Hall Freemasonry. They moved Freemasonry to Louisiana, to Mississippi, to Alabama, to Texas, to Iowa, to Illinois, to Indiana. They opened the floodgates for it. And again, I want to keep this as quick and dirty as possible. Around the 1860s, you have the Eastern Alliance, which basically says we don't want anything to do with the National Grand Lodge. And then what you also end up seeing is you have Louisiana and Ohio, who end up pulling out of the National Grand Lodge. And that opens the floodgates merely because Prince Hall Freemasons, what we consider today as Prince Hall Freemasons, they're getting more and more access to actual literature on Freemasonry. In 1861, in the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Ohio's proceedings, they are talking about receiving educational materials to get out to the lodges for the brothers to educate themselves on basic regular Freemasonry, how to enter a lodge, how to write minutes for your lodge, how to conduct the floor work. This type of information is now being accessed for more people. Men are becoming more, the men of African descent, many of them are very well educated, but at the same time, many of them are learning to read after the Civil War. The Freedmen's Bureau is pushing educational materials down throughout the South as well as throughout the Midwest. More and more information is coming out. So now we get the impetus of learning about Freemasonry, and then taxation coming from the National Grand Lodge, but also the education coming with regular Freemasonry. So with all these things coming up, brothers are starting to see that there's not supposed to be a station above a Grand Master. What we do in our jurisdiction is our jurisdiction. And lo and behold, you have Louisiana becoming an independent Grand Lodge. You have Ohio becoming an independent Grand Lodge. You have Alabama. You have Tennessee. You start to see the floodgates open. And right around the 1876 timeline, we start to see the nail in the coffin. Around 1878, that's when most Prince Hall Freemasons feel that the National Grand Lodge itself died out. Well, now, again, on the other side of the spectrum, some people say that they were still going. However, we don't have actual records, and many of us are still trying to get access to some of those records to say that the organization was still alive. However, we have a lot of information that basically says that it was a done deal. So with that, that's how we're going to close out that small section on the National Grand Lodge, because we can pick it up again, because this particular topic is one that could take up an entire show. And I hope that we can leave it at that for now, but we can also talk about some of the further issues with it. But one last thing regarding the National Grand Lodge. When a lot of brothers felt that the National Grand Lodge had basically adjourned sine die in 1878 at the Wilmington, Delaware convention, but the caveat to that is many what we consider Prince Hall Grand Lodges today say that they closed down. The other side of the spectrum says that they never closed down. That's why many in the Prince Hall Grand Lodge camp consider the National Grand Lodge or the PHO or the Compact Grand Lodge clandestine. And that's where we'll leave it today.
Thank you, Brother Collins. So, again, a lot, and as Brother Collins said, that, we actually could spend an entire evening on each of these topics, but, we want to be mindful of the time and giving you a brief snippet.
Hey, Brother Caffey.
I'm sorry, go ahead, brother.
Just throwing a quick bit. The chairman for that 1878 Delaware Convention was the Grand Master for Georgia, Honorable John H. DeVoe. I had to throw that out there. Every time Georgia's involved, I got to throw it out there.
Yes, sir. And there's nothing wrong with that. So, as Brother Collins alluded to, and as we've been talking about tonight, with, again, Prince Hall Freemasonry, there are a lot of myths out there. During Brother Morgan's slideshow, he gave you a picture, presented a picture of a lot of picture that, coming into the craft, a lot of us thought was Prince Hall. A lot of people outside of Freemasonry thinks this, is Prince Hall. But again, when we're dealing with such an old organization and records being so scattered and some unfortunately being lost, a lot of things are created, and we owe a lot of that, and through the work of Charles Wesley, and through the work of the also the late great brother Joseph Walks, who we went back and discovered that a lot of these tall tales stemmed from a past Grand Master, actually, of Prince Hall Freemasonry, William Grimshaw. So, Brother Morgan, since Brother Grimshaw was a member of your jurisdiction, we were going to let you tackle that.
Here y'all go. Pick on DC. All right. I'm gonna touch on this real quickly. One thing I will say, positive before I get on Grimshaw too bad, is that I think that, first of all, in the District of Columbia within Prince Hall Freemasonry, one thing I think that we can be very proud of, even including Grimshaw down to Brother Alton Roundtree today, Brother Tahuti Evans, is that we do have a lineage, an intellectual lineage here of writing and publishing. Even if it's things that's controversial, or in Grimshaw's case, things that have been debunked, it's one thing that I can say we take pride in here, is that we have a lineage of publication and writing about Prince Hall Freemasonry. And a friendly challenge, my friendly challenge to all other jurisdictions is to meet us on that plane, because it's very, very badly needed. We don't have a monopoly on it, but we do want to try to increase the competition in that. With that said, I'm going to talk about this book right here, if you can see it. This is the Official History of Freemasonry Among Colored People by William H. Grimshaw. This book was published in the early 1900s. Past Grandmaster Grimshaw was a member of Social Lodge Number 1, the oldest African American lodge here in the district. And what Grimshaw did was he primarily created an image of Prince Hall and of Prince Hall Freemasonry that I think was crafted in a way to make what was called Negro Freemasonry at that time marketable. Okay, so he created a situation. One of the things, just to give an example, one thing that was often used against early Prince Hall Freemasons was that, well, men of African descent can't be Masons because you're slaves, or you're the sons of slaves, and all this kind of stuff, which in many instances may have been true. You know, we can debate whether or not a former slave, has the right to be a Mason. That's a discussion I'd be more comfortable with having in a lodge setting around brothers. But the point of the matter was that we don't know whether or not Prince Hall was was born a slave or not. We really don't know. But what Grimshaw did was he basically would say, well, Prince Hall was the son of a Caucasian man and a black woman of French descent. Now, I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean, but what he did was he tried to make Prince Hall safe. He tried to make it a situation where you have Prince Hall is almost chosen in a way. If you read Grimshaw very carefully, he makes some statements about Prince Hall and his life that you can't back up. For instance, Prince Hall being born in Bridgetown, Barbados. Literally just before we got online tonight, I had to correct a friend of mine who made a statement about Prince Hall being made in Barbados. I've seen several academic textbooks and other materials that state this, but this all goes back to William Grimshaw. Another thing that Grimshaw does, if you notice his writing style, first of all, very little source citation. But when it comes to Prince Hall and his life, he writes it almost as though he was there. He writes it, Prince Hall was being called to America, to leave his home in Barbados, to go to Massachusetts, to do something great. I mean, how do you know? How do you know Prince Hall felt? I mean, we don't have his journals to the degree that we wish we did. We don't have certain material, and the material we do have oftentimes contradicts what Grimshaw is saying. Now, I will put my own personal caveat or opinion on that, which is that in understanding early Prince Hall Freemasonry, we have to understand, as I said in the slideshow, that we are a product of the African experience. So when Grimshaw is saying that Prince Hall himself was, from the Caribbean or from Barbados, I mean, we don't know. But I do think that Grimshaw, in part, may have been overhearing some oral history or oral traditions of who Prince Hall and some of these brothers were. Prince Hall may not have been from Barbados or Haiti or whatever the case may be, but I think it's safe to assume that some of these brothers were. I mean, the transatlantic slave trade is something that was an active and a legal institution when he was alive. Some of these brothers probably were born in West Africa, born in the Caribbean, moved around, several different situations. One discussion that's been had a lot recently is the idea that some of these brothers may have been bilingual or trilingual even. Some of these brothers may have actually been externally professing Christianity, but in their own home and their own privacy, they may have still even been continuing West African religions and possibly using African Lodge as a cultural synonym for their practices. Not necessarily saying that they're bringing those practices into the Masonic ritual, but saying that they may have used the lodge building or used that assembly to answer a certain cultural need that they were experiencing at that time. There's a number of other myths. I'm not going to get into each and every one of them this evening, but Grimshaw's book is very, very handled with care. I always promote and tell brothers, I have my copy of Prince Hall Life and Legacy right here. I always tell people, especially if you're considering membership or you are a member and you haven't read it, standard reading to really get a better idea of who Prince Hall was, what the movement was that he started, and and I think who we really are, or what kind of organization we're trying to become as we move into the future. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, good brother. So Prince Hall in 2015, where are we at today, and even beyond today, where do we hope, or where do we think that where are we going, Brother Collins?
All right, we're back again?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Outstanding. Well, I think that we have to look at Prince Hall Freemasonry, you know, through different lenses, because the organization is not the organization of yesterday. The organization from 1775, through its growth pains to 1784 to 1787, and the 1827. 1847, and with the growth and boom of the Grand Lodges, where only a handful of individuals had knowledge, had a true understanding of the premise and some of the dogmas of Freemasonry. Those days are long gone now, because the information structure that was there then is not there now. I think things are looking a lot different. Things are looking a lot more different. The way things were in the 70s, in the 60s, because you had basically a structure of leadership, and the structure of leadership said, this is how things go, that's the end of it. And the brothers in the past, that's what they had to take. But I think in 2015, now you're starting to see brothers hungry. They want more information. They're eager to learn. Well, where did that? Well, who said that? Where is this information coming from? So now in 2015, where you only had, you think about the 2000, even the 1980s, you had a handful of individuals. You had Joseph Walks, and before him, you had Harry Davidson, Harry Williamson. Before them, you had the Schaumburgs. You had, it's a small group. But now you look at Georgia, you have Dave Gillarm. Ohio, you have Brother Caffey. DC, you have Brother Morgan, Brother Roundtree. You have Brother Tahuti Evans, and you have Brother Tom Van Buren and Alex Benton out of Arkansas. You're starting to get pockets of people generally interested in history. Brother Antoine Lilly in North Carolina. South Carolina, you have Brother Spencer as well as Brother Kennedy. So now you're starting to see these guys interested in Freemasonry from a historical perspective. But the future of Prince Hall Freemasonry is compounded on education and keeping the brothers interested. I always throw around that quote that we laugh about with John Madden. Don't worry about the horse being blind. Just fill the wagon. Don't worry about the brothers not wanting the Masonic education. Just give it to them. Allow them on their own to go out and receive the information, to digest the information, and to learn it. Because what happens when you start to give brothers some type of Masonic education? They start to come back. They want to listen to this lecture. Oh, it's a lecture going on? The lodges fill up. So the more that I honestly believe that we actually start to frame from the top as far as the lodge level, but it also trickles to the Grand Lodge level. The more we give brothers education, the more we're going to get them to participate more. But just to keep going a little bit further, the more that we start to address Prince Hall Freemasonry and the ritualistic work inside of Freemasonry does not change. Semicolon, however, comma, the way that you deal with this new age of membership has to change. So the organization, as far as the ritualistic dogma, does not change. However, the interaction with the membership, as far as how you access them, the amount of information that you relate to them in, the way that you talk to them, that has to change. And if we can meet those particular issues, I believe that Prince Hall Freemasonry will not only rebound, but it will actually we'll see a large growth in our membership as well as our current membership as well.
You know something? I'm sorry. I don't mean to speak out of turn. But I completely agree with you on that, Brother Collins. And so this conversation you and I have all the time. You know, I'm stealing a phrase from a good friend of mine, which is that what is it that younger Masons or new Masons want? They want more Masonry. And that's really what I think is going on today. With the availability of the internet, books. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can find, whether it's on the internet or in your local library, that is making it more accessible. So a lot of the newer members, they want this kind of information. They want to know this history, but a lot of times don't know where to get it. And I think it's a great thing that we're doing this tonight to try to give just a taste of this kind of information, because you know, one challenge that I gave in my first ever publication, Masonic research publication, was for brothers who are already Masons, do an oral history project of your lodge. If your lodge is old, if your lodge was in existence before you, if you're not a founder of your lodge, you know, or even if you are, do an oral history project. Talk to the older living members. I mean, when I became a worshipful master in my lodge in November of last year, first thing I did was I looked at my roster. I tried to call my members, and I recognized the fact that our oldest living member of my lodge, now mind you, my lodge will be 100 years old next year. Next is our centennial. The oldest living member of my lodge has been a member since 1946. He's been a member almost 70 years. So that's somebody who has a wealth of information, and I can't tell you how many lodges have older members, past masters, etc., who have, whether they have books, photographs, or just recollections of history, because these lodges are not only fraternal institutions, but they're local institutions. You'd be amazed at how much stuff you'll find, and even if you're in, you know, a place like New York City, Los Angeles, or if you're just in a little small town in the middle of Kansas or Missouri somewhere. I mean, it doesn't matter. Get the history of your lodge, because that's how these grand historians here tonight, that's how we all start. Those of us who do this, you know, full time, as I like to say.
Thank you, brothers. So we do have some questions from some of our viewers. One of the questions, and I think Brother Collins, you touched on a little bit, but a brother posted, you know, on dealing, when we, you know, talking about dealing with the future of Freemasonry. How do we go about keeping members involved and excited about the craft? I'll pose that to anyone that wants to answer it.
You know, I'll just jump in again. You know, excitement is, you know, sometimes it's not necessarily doing something new. You know, the biggest fad, I say, within the past 2 years is the concept of the what is it? The traditional observance lodge. You know, the TO lodge. That's the biggest fad, because it's you know, it's new. It came out. Everybody was interested in it. But it was a conversation that Brother Morgan and I had when we said, you know, you're thinking about it, we're like, you really don't need to do a new lodge or a TO lodge. All you have to do is just do the work. Learn your ritualistic work and then do it. But on the other end, it's giving them something that they can participate in that they've never done. It's the idea or the concept of the table lodge. The table lodge is something that I think in Prince Hall Freemasonry that may get brothers to come out. But inside of our Prince Hall Grand Lodges, we might say, well, you know, we didn't participate. The table lodges, we don't do that type of stuff. Brother Daryl Hodge found one of the most important pieces of Prince Hall Freemasonry in the past probably 20 to 30, or I give it the past 50 years. The Columbian Exposition article talks about Prince Hall and his cohorts sitting at what? A table lodge. It's the things that we really don't focus on that can get the brothers to come out. It's the lectures, the actual lecture. And I'm not talking about a lecture where brothers come out and say, Prince Hall was born, is mixed, he was born in Barbados, and that's not a lecture. I don't consider that a lecture. I consider that parrot Freemasonry where people just regurgitate old stories. I'm talking about, let's talk about the Civil War and Prince Hall Freemasonry. I'm talking about, let's talk about the United States Congress and almost every black man that served in the United States Congress during Reconstruction were Prince Hall Masons. These are things that people don't know about that they're interested in. And I believe that when we start to influence the brothers and give them something of substance rather than a fish fry, giving them something of substance rather than just a fish fry, that the brothers will come back in droves. That's all I have on that.
And to add in a little bit on that, to keep members coming to the lodge, you got to make the lodge meetings interesting. If you know me, you know I'm very real and very blunt. Nobody wants to come to the meetings just to hear about how much money you don't have. Nobody wants to talk about, the members don't want to come to the lodge meeting to talk about what type of batter to use for the next fish fry. The meetings have to be fun. Keep your meetings short and fun. Nope. You start a meeting at 7:30. There's no reason at 10:30 you should still be in that lodge meeting. Keep your meetings short. Keep your meetings interesting. Have a lecture and fellowship. Fellowship is the key to keep members want to come back to the lodge. I don't want to come to my meeting and I don't know and I don't talk to anybody, or I don't feel like I'm part of a family. Right now, I know I can pick up the phone and call past Master Carlos Smith and talk to him about what I did that day, or he can just tell me stuff that went on with his daughter. I can talk to the Junior Warden Cornelius Wilson about how great the New York Knicks are. This is stuff that I can talk about because I feel like I'm part of a family. So members are going to want to come back when they feel accepted, when they feel like they're going to get something out of a meeting. They don't want to hear this old past master just arguing with each other. They having the same argument they've been having since 1961. Nobody wants to hear that when they come to their lodge meeting. So if you want to keep members coming, have a lecture, keep your meeting short, and have some type of fellowship afterwards. That's all I got.
Thank you, brother. Also, another question. What is Prince Hall Masonry, or what is Prince Hall Freemasonry? You know, I think we, touch on that, and we've had conversations regarding that. Sometime, if someone asks you, what exactly is Prince Hall Freemasonry?
I'll take that question. There is no separate Freemasonry in terms of the ritual. I myself like to use the term that when you look at predominantly African American or Prince Hall Freemasonry, and you look at our historically Caucasian counterparts, Grand Lodges, they're really the same organization with two different representations, based upon, and it's just a fact of American life that the slave trade, the Reconstruction, Jim Crow era, race has played a pivotal role in the American psyche. It continues down to today. I'm not going to get too political on that, but that's just a fact, and it's a fact of law. Okay, so understanding the fact that at one point in time, people of different skin colors and ethnicities were not able to not only socialize, not able to marry, not able to conduct commerce together on equal playing fields, that trickled over into the religious and social organizations. So again, our Prince Hall Masonic family is not a separate Masonic organization in terms of the ritual, in terms of our history. We still link into that same tree. But I would say Prince Hall affiliation is what I tend to use is it's our tradition, it's our intellectual and our in many cases our family tradition. Just based upon our cultural experience. One of the best comparisons I can make to Prince Hall Freemasonry is this idea of having a black church, or HBCUs, which I'm a proud graduate of Howard University. Understand that our institutions were created to deal with our experiences that we had in this country. At one point in time, you could not just apply to Harvard or Yale or wherever. You had Howard, Hampton, Tuskegee, Xavier. These black colleges. And Prince Hall Freemasonry, and not only Prince Hall Freemasonry, but also you had whether it's the Black Greek fraternities, which we have a founder of Omega Psi Phi as a founding member of my lodge, in Bishop Edgar A. Love. But if you want to talk about black college fraternities and sororities, the Black Oddfellows, Black Elks, the AME Church. There's all kind of institutions because these were created really out of necessity. So I would say it's really our tradition, our experience within the Masonic world, but it came out of necessity, catered towards our experience and our understanding. So I'll leave it at that, I guess.
Hey, if I can jump in on the tail end of that one, I want to be sure to because it's actually a great question. What is Prince Hall Freemasonry? Let's lay it out this way. Prince Hall Freemasonry is the clearest definition of the Black experience in America. People coming to the United States as slaves. People basically considered chattel. And an organization itself, in and of itself, is supposed to see the inside of a man, no matter what their religion is, what their belief system is, what they are as far as their vocation, and it's supposed to be who they really are. Okay. Before the first lobbyist one of the first documented lobbyists in America is Prince Hall. He's going and he's essentially petitioning the government. Then you have the establishment of the African American Church. Prince Hall Freemasonry is right there. They essentially established the AME. They essentially established the AME Church to mirror what their lodge system looks like. Now you have an interstate organizations. Now you have the AME Church and the circuit riders going to different states, setting up tent revivals. Where these tent revivals, you end up finding new lodges, and then you go through time. You end up seeing businessmen, Simon Ash, Horace King, all of these men of industry in the African American experience that are members of Prince Hall lodges. They end up becoming members of Prince Hall Freemasonry. The next thing you know, you have the Civil War, and who's serving as soldiers? Prince Hall Masons serving as the officers as well as the enlisted soldiers in Prince Hall Freemasonry. So fast forward even further, after the Civil War, during Reconstruction, who are the leaders in the local communities? Prince Hall Freemasonry, our membership. Then you fast forward even further into the Civil Rights Movement. Who are you looking at? A. Philip Randolph. You're looking at John Lewis. You're looking at Robert Nesbitt. All these men that are dealing with the Civil Rights Movement are Prince Hall Freemasonry. Fast forward even to today, some of the most notable figures in African American life. Isaiah Thomas. You have Jesse Jackson. You have all of these names.
Richard Pryor, Shaquille O'Neal.
Exactly, Shaquille O'Neal. Marcel Darius. All of these men are Prince Hall Freemasonry. So when you ask what is Prince Hall Freemasonry is what we consider the Black experience in America. No matter what's put in front of you, we find the best of what we can. But we also use the tenets of Freemasonry to better our lives. That's what Prince Hall Freemasonry is to me. It's the African American experience in America. That's what Prince Hall Freemasonry is.
Well put, brother. So again, being mindful of the time, I wanted to give our guests tonight an opportunity for any closing remarks or statements that they'd want to make. We'll start out with Brother Gillarm.
Well, this has definitely been a delightful experience. With my closing comments, I started thinking about the future of Prince Hall Masonry in Georgia. It's a lot of people I can shout out. Our Grand Assistant Historian, Ron Robinson. That's my wingman, partner in crime. He's the one that makes sure that everything I say actually makes sense. That's a very hard task. I would give a shout out to Ronnie Nelson, but he's somewhere practicing voodoo and trying to determine how to take me out right now. But I guess bring it back serious. When I think about the future of Prince Hall Masonry, there's two people I really think about. One is our Grand Master, Most Worshipful Bruce A. James, and our Deputy Grand Master, Cory Shackelford Sr. Grand Master James is the type of person that he's a people person. If he didn't tell you that he was the Grand Master, you probably wouldn't know. That's not the type of person he is. his vision is always to move the Grand Lodge forward. It's not about him. He doesn't want the accolades. He wants the Grand Lodge to receive all the accolades. And our Deputy Grand Master Cory D. Shackelford Sr., who is, as of right now, looks like he's the youngest Deputy Grand Master in our Grand Lodge history, and we have been in operation since 1870. If you ever get a chance to meet Deputy Grand Master Shackelford, his energy is contagious. He's always thinking about how can we improve different aspects of the Grand Lodge. If he sees a problem, he doesn't complain about it. He looks at solutions on how to fix it. And that's what type of stuff that we need. It's easy to complain about a problem, but it's hard to come up with a solution to actually fix it. And that's the type of man that he is. And the future of Prince Hall Masonry in the state of Georgia is going to thrive based off brothers like Deputy Grand Master Cory Shackelford Sr. Those are my comments. Shout out to the St. Louis Cardinals, #1 team in Major League Baseball, and the New York Knicks. We're going to win a championship. You all have a good night.
All right. Well, I don't know about that, but okay. Thank you, good brother. Brother Morgan.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I'm not sure about that. I'm actually from New Jersey, and you know, y'all stole our basketball team. That's another story. In any case, you know, this has been a pleasure. You know, when you talk about the future of Prince Hall Freemasonry, I honestly think that this is the first step. Honestly, a while back I published something about the technology, Prince Hall Freemasonry utilizing technology to spread our message, to spread our history, and move our organization forward. So I think that's a great thing. I also want to go back on something I said earlier. Not go back, but clarify that Prince Hall Freemasonry, as far as I'm concerned, is a historically black institution. We're not exclusively black. We have members of all different races, religions, etc. You know, but it is an organization that is birthed out of the African American experience. So I will stand by that to my dying day. But with that said, I think that if I had to leave a message for whether it's my Grand Lodge or anybody else, I would just say I think that the time has come for us to continue the work of those great brothers of the past in interacting more with other legitimate Masons, other legitimate Masonic bodies, because I really think that Prince Hall Freemasonry has a story to tell that a lot of folks really don't recognize or appreciate, and it's not all necessarily race-based. But I think we have a story to tell. I think we have something very valuable to contribute, not only in the Masonic world, but also in other aspects of life and culture that a lot of people don't appreciate. So it's my hope that we will continue to take those shackles off of ourselves and move our organization and our communities and indeed our countries forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Morgan. Brother Collins.
All right. Am I good again? Okay. Perfect. Okay. I'll just finish up this way. It was three quick questions that they had asked, and I can kind of wrap them in together. One brother asked, how will we be able to get Prince Hall Freemasonry interacting on an international level and correspondence? Again, it's more of an education piece, because the CCFC of today is not the CCFC of Reconstruction. The CCFC of Reconstruction went through every single Grand Lodge proceeding, and they did an executive summary, and they placed it in the back of it. So we can't, and again, we have to go with the times. We can't necessarily put the CCFC of today like the CCFC of yesterday. But slowly but surely, I believe, maybe at the Conference of Grand Masters, that some people have to come up with possibly some recommendations for the Grand Masters to say, hey, make sure that your Grand Secretary or your CCFC is staying on top of their duties. Another question brother asked was dealing with the concept of the lodge as far as education, but also business. The lodge is a business, but we have to be able to take out the learning process where some brothers aren't used to that type of business administration, and again, make it fun, make it interactive. Bring somebody in, teach them how to set up a ledger. A meeting should not be taking up 45 minutes of your hour-and-a-half meeting, or 50 minutes of your hour-and-a-half meeting dealing with business. Mail it to them a week in advance. That way, when they get there, are there any changes? Go over it that way. Another question the brother had threw in there was asking, do we ever foresee Prince Hall Grand Lodges merging with state Grand Lodges. For me, I just don't see it. To be honest, I believe that we, and I know the kind of pitfall that some people want us to bring us in, is saying separate but equal. But at the same time, some churches work well on different sides of the road, because they're still preaching the same gospel. They're still preaching the same concept of righteousness. And with Freemasonry, in two different Grand Lodges, we can still teach making good men better. But I'll close out with this. I'm very proud of our Grand Lodge. I didn't say it in this one. It's a going phrase that we say: Prince Hall Freemasonry in the state of Alabama is alive and well. We are a young Grand Lodge. Our leadership is young, and we're keeping the brothers interested. We do every year. We want brothers to come down to the Selma March. Brother Gillarm came down with us, and when I talk about, when you see a bunch of men in aprons and white gloves lined up, lockstep, arm in arm, and crossing the Edmund Pettus Bridge, that right there sends a message to the crowd that Prince Hall Freemasonry is alive and well in the state of Alabama.
Thank you, good brother. And actually, I'd like to thank all of our guests this evening, and I hope our audience, was able to glean something from tonight's conversation. Again, apologies for the earlier technical difficulties. Luckily, we got all that worked out. I want to just quickly, in closing, as I reflect on the conversation tonight, I can't help but go back. I've been in the craft a little over 20 years now, and I can remember way back when, way before Facebook and really social media, the big thing was being in a email group, and one of the earliest email groups was on PHA Research, where we discussed a lot of topics, relative to Freemasonry. And after that, Blue Light, which was created by and founded by Brother Ezekiel Bay out of New York. And I definitely want to thank that brother, because I see what we're doing now as an extension of what was created on that list. And I'm proud of Prince Hall Freemasonry. I'm proud to be a Prince Hall Freemason, and I look forward to celebrating and doing something to honor the legacy as we move forward. I like to also, just everyone think about the brothers that was mentioned earlier, the brothers that have paved the way, for us, and also those brothers that are coming after us. I always say in my lodge, and when I get the chance to talk about it, we stand on the shoulder of giants while we're getting our shows prepared for the future generation of Freemasons to stand on. So that's one thing to think of. For more information on the Cory Adams Lodge of Research and Education, please feel free to visit our website, which is located at ohiopharesearch.org. And in closing, I'm reminded of the words that actually Brother Prince Hall said upon receiving the charter for African Lodge 459, and this could be found in Charles Wesley's life book on Prince Hall, Life and Legacy. Upon receiving the charter, he said, "By the grace of God, I also endeavor to fulfill all that is required of me in the charter, and as I shall make the Constitution my guide, I hope we shall adorn our profession as Masons." And indeed, I think he's done so, and we're the reflection of that. So again, thank you for joining us, and I hope you have a good evening.